right, welcome to our bi-weekly endgame class. Today we're going to look at games from a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, but not very far away. Two of the games are Rook and Pawn endgames, and hopefully you can see, okay. And the third one is the King and Pawn ending. And in each game, in a coincidence, the famous player won, and the player you never heard of didn't win. Amazing. Although some of you, if not all of you, maybe none of them, have heard of the guy Fischer beat, right? The correct answer to that is, who's Fischer? That's the correct answer. It's comedy, not in their blood. Okay, and I don't want to show you the whole game because it's an endgame class. So, okay, and white played Rook takes e6. Okay, this is a Rook and Pawn ending because I said so, right? Okay, and in a Rook and Pawn ending, there's three things that are important. Whose Rook is more active, whose King is more active, and whose pawns are closer to queening. In this position, the Kings are both on the 8th rank. Nobody's pawns are queening. And White's Rook is more active. And there's another thing that's potentially important here, but maybe not, is these pawns are isolated. Okay? But I don't know. I'm not sure that makes a big difference. It could. Okay. And I would think, if I was watching the game and I wasn't playing it, that probably like more likely a draw, but white might win because white is the one making threats, but both sides have a few pawns. So there's two things you have to realize, and they're the same thing, right? Sort of like if you're twins, you're the same. Okay. So you have to realize that when you're trying to win because you have the advantage, you want all the pawns on the board. When you're trying to draw because you're in trouble, you don't want any pawns on the board. So if it's Rook against Rook, you're not going to win or lose. But if it's like Rook and 7 pawns against Rook and 7 pawns, and you have a losing position because the guy's getting 4 queens, you would hope that all the pawns are traded off. So in this position, Black's move is fairly obvious. Who can guess Black's move? Anybody? And you get to look at the board. I'm not going to help you. No? Still looking at me. Who's the bravest? Nobody's the bravest?
Rook C8.
Rook C. Okay, so you defended this pawn, but you forgot about this pawn, and you forgot about Dre. So what you need to do is not lose either pawn. And you're like, how do you do that? He's attacking both pawns. How do we make sure we don't lose a pawn? Yeah?
FXG5.
Yeah, you raised your hand and you answered. I knew you were twins. Right. You take the pawn on G5, so now you've taken a pawn, and then white takes back, and now you could play your Rook C8 if you want. I'm not saying he played Rook C8, but you could. And here, you could take either way on G5. Seems like, excuse me, this pawn on F4 could be more easily harassed than this pawn, because we could play Rook D4 or Rook F8, potentially, and harass it. But this pawn, we could only do it this way. So he took with the F pawn. Well, it doesn't make a big difference. Okay, now, another thing, well, I already said it. One of the 3 important things I said was king activity, rook activity, and queening your pawns. That's the problem with Rook C8. That's not Rook activity, that's Rook passivity. And then your Rook is defending and can't attack White's pawns, and White's Rook is attacking and can attack Black's pawns. So we never want to play Rook C8 unless we have to, because then our Rook can't do anything. It's more like, I don't know what he did, but it's more likely he played something like Rook D4 and tried to take White's pawn. To me, that's more likely. Let's see. Okay, Rook D4. Now, this pawn's impossible to save, and this pawn's impossible to save. The truth hurts. So they traded them. All right. Now, again, as I said when I started, when you want to draw, which Black does, you want all the pawns off the board, so Black's doing a good job. If it's Rook against Rook, it's going to be a draw. And White wants to win, and the problem that Black has is White can move his pawns, but this pawn, if I move it, I could take en passant, and then this pawn would be hanging. So white's rook is still a lot better than black's rook because the combination of these two things stops these pawns. We can't move those pawns. Okay. Also, if I want to move my king up, which I do, I like to move my king up, okay? I can move my king up to the 3rd rank, basically anywhere. You can't do that. Your king can go up 1 and then you're done. So if you want to move your king up the board, potentially white has better chances. Again, looks like a draw to me, but the fact that white potentially can have a better king, the fact that this 1 pawn is stopping these 2 pawns, and the fact that it's white's move gives white the advantage. Okay, rook a6. Now, somebody tell me the difference. You can tell me at home too, but you have to yell really loudly because this is the past. So you gotta like really yell loud. Okay, not you guys, them at home. Okay, what's the difference if you'd like to win this pawn between rook a6 and rook c5? Why did white play rook a6 and not play rook c5? Yeah? Wait, hold on. Oh, yeah.
So he could take the pawn and still guard his G pawn.
That's right. But if he plays rook c5, he could do that too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So why he actually played rook a6. So why did he play rook a6 instead of rook c5? Because rook c5 protects the G pawn.
Then he could take the pawn, and then he tries to attack that pawn, but he can't take it.
What? English? You're saying this move tries to take this pawn? Mm-hmm. And this move tries to take this pawn, right? So why is one move better than the other if they both want to take the pawn?
I mean, if he moves to a4...
That's right. That guy's right. You know that guy?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's right. He said, what if black tries to save his pawn? Because the rook is defending it over here, all the way over there. If I play rook c5 and you play a4, that's fine. However, he played rook a6. Now if you play a4, I take with the rook. So you can't save your pawn now. So rook a6 is better because Fischer predicted how his opponent would try to save his pawn. He's like, if I play rook c5, he could play a4. If I play rook a6, I'm winning that pawn for free. Okay? Now, Benko did something I don't like. And he did lose the game, so maybe I'm right. Benko's a famous player also. And this is something I complain about a lot when my students do it, or when famous people do it, or not so famous, is a lot of times when people don't know what to do, they just start checking. And if I have the black pieces, I would prefer white's king never move. Right there, perfect. Then if I promote my pawn, maybe it'll be check. Okay, I don't want the king coming up here taking my pawn. I don't want the king coming up here defending. Right there, perfect. And he played check and checked the king up. I don't like that. Now the reason he did it is if the king doesn't go to a3, then white can't win. Like this, white's not getting anywhere here, right? And if white goes here, he loses his a pawn. So the only way for white to win is to play king a3, and Benko must have thought the king is blocking the pawn. Perfect. So that's why he did that, I guess. Now the king's blocking the pawn. But I don't like white moving his king up. I don't like it. I like it for white. Okay, now he played rook here, which is a strange move. Takes, h6. Now, I don't like the move rook h3, but it's obvious why he did it. He's saying, you can't move that pawn because your king's there, and you can't move that pawn because I pinned it. So he's pretty smart. He stopped both pawns from moving. And now black has to get a queen, but black can't get a queen, so he played here, and now he can get a queen. Unfortunately, 2 pawns is more than 1 pawn. It's unfortunate. So he checks and takes, and the reason is when he puts his rook here, his rook is far out of the way, so he can push this pawn. If his rook is here or here or here, that pawn can't move anywhere. Try to get that pawn going. Okay, that pawn can't legally move, so, you know. Okay, and he takes the pawn. So because of all the ramifications of what happened with white having a more active rook, white has an extra pawn in the endgame. Now, unfortunately for black, there's two ways white can win, and usually they both work. One way for white to win is I queen and you queen. And then we take the queen with the rook, and we give up our rook for the queen. And what's left? Let's say this pawn queens and this pawn queens. And let's say white sacrifices his rook and black sacrifices his rook for those pawns. Now that pawn is left, this pawn. White has a pawn and black has nothing. The other way to win is everybody pushes their pawns, everybody's happy, and then at the very end, the rook sacrifices for the pawn, and white has two passed pawns, and they beat the rook because they're too good. They're too far. They're going to queen, right? Those are the two ways to win. Fischer played king b4, which I knew he would, because when he played rook here, I said he wanted to queen his pawn. And I tell my students this, someday they'll listen. You move your king up in the end game. So he could have played king b4 or king b2, moved his king up. Okay, g5 makes sense. And then he checks the king. He's trying to play rook here. He's trying to get his rook behind the pawn. Also, he thinks if the king goes here, maybe he can trade rooks and win the king and pawn ending. Not sure. He did do it. Okay, so he played a4. He changed his mind. And then he gets his rook to stop the pawn. And now he plays a very funny move here. He's hoping he takes the rook and then here. Isn't that funny? I think if you have the black pieces, it's funny. If you have the white pieces, it's not funny. No. Okay, so did he take the rook?
No.
No. Okay. Rook d7 check, rook d1. So he's stopping the pawn from queening, and he's got two passed pawns. And also, if black's like, no, I got to stop your pawns, he can't. We have a name for that. That's called cutting off the king. And you do that when you have a queen or a rook against nothing. You like stop the king from moving because you can take up the whole file. The king can't go past it. It's a force field. g2, rook g1, rook g6, and here comes white's pawns. And black's like, I'm going to move my king over there and stop you. And he plays the move a6. This is a very sneaky move. Obviously, he wants to queen, right? Okay, so you have to take it. They check first, but it doesn't matter. So he should have taken it, but it didn't matter. Okay, and then I take this, and now based on what I told you about the force field, after here, what does white do? How does white win the game?
King b5.
King
c2.
King. Those are both good moves. That's right. King b5 and rook c2. But you have to play rook c2 eventually. And now the king can't come over. You're stopping it. And then white's going to move his king and pawn up and win the game. So unfortunate. Yeah. So that was his plan. Okay? And Benko didn't like that, so he checked. And that didn't work because of here. Takes. And again, this king can't get over there. That's too slow. And he plays the brilliant a7. Obviously, if you take, I go check. Right? So he played king e6. Now he can take the pawn, except it's not his turn. By the way, if he goes this way to go get the pawn, white has two ways to win. The boring way and the brilliant way. Which way do you guys like?
Brilliant.
Brilliant. Let's make a queen. That's the brilliant way. Takes and then check. You like that? Like you do the boring way, we'll just check first and then we'll queen. Boring. Still winning. Okay, so he played king e6. Rook defends the pawn. And easy win. And you block with the rook. Now, do you guys know how to mate with the rook?
Yes.
Well, so does Fischer. Amazing. Now, let's see who's the smartest. Let's see, 1230. Okay. This was December 1959. So how old was Fischer?
1959.
That's what year it was. You guys heard of Bobby Fischer?
Yeah.
Yeah. He was the world champion, but not in 1959. He was 16 years old. But he was probably the best or the second best player in the U.S. Probably the best.
45 years old?
What?
45?
16 years old.
16.
Yeah. He became world champion at age 29, then he quit chess. When he was 16, he was probably the best player in the U.S. Maybe not, but probably. And that was played in the U.S. Championship against a very famous player. But Fischer had a rook and pawn ending, and normally, when you talk about endgames and grandmasters, normally we make fun of kids. That's what we do. We're like, kids can't play endgames. You gotta get them to an endgame, then you'll beat them. In the opening and middle game, they play really tricky. Kids are always playing tactics. But in the endgame, I've played endgames for 50 years, and you're 9 years old. You never played an endgame. So I can beat you with my old man strength. And even though Fischer was 16, he played better in the endgame than the old guy. That's why Fischer became world champion. He was good at everything when he was young. So you gotta get good at the endgame. The next one is by another famous player, Vasily Smyslov, and he took the queen, obviously. And we have the same material imbalance, rook and 5 against rook and 5, although I should say it's balanced. So it's pretty obvious here which rook is better. No?
White's rook?
White's rook's a lot better. Okay? Pawn structure's about the same. However, black has a passed pawn. Now, I'd like to explain to the audience and you at home, not all passed pawns are equal. Some passed pawns are queening, like in the last game, and some passed pawns are not queening because they haven't gone far enough or they're easily blocked. If white gets his king here, I don't think that pawn's going to queen. And if the pawn was here, now we're talking, if it's close to queening. So that pawn's not going to queen, but this king can't move up. That's another problem black has. This pawn on f5 is really annoying. If I move my king to the second rank, because your rook goes away, I can't go to the third rank. So black's king can never move up. White's king can move up this way or this way or this way. White's king can move up the board. Black's king can't move up the board. White's rook is on the 7th rank. Black's rook is on the 1st rank. So white's better. It's equal material, but white's going to have a better king soon, and white has a better rook now. Okay, also, the pawns I'm highlighting in red, those pawns are defended. If black takes those pawns, that loses. However, all these pawns are lined up, and they're not defended on the same row. So maybe white could just start taking them one after one, or black can say, no, don't take my pawns and play defensive. That's the problem black has. If black takes this pawn, he can't take that one, that's too far away. Takes this pawn, how's he gonna get that one? But if white takes pawns, they're all lined up. The rook can just take all those pawns. So white has a big advantage because of all that stuff I said. Smyslov was a very famous endgame player, and he was the world chess champion, although not in 1939. I believe 1957. So Smyslov was a kid when this was played. Okay. So he played king h2, moving his king up in the endgame. Go Smyslov. Rook d8, activating his rook. Go rook. King g3, moving his king up in the endgame. I suspect he might want to do this. Man, that king's going to take everything, right? That looks good for white if white can get his king up there. Rook d4, black says, no, you can't do that. We saw this in the last endgame. He's cutting the king off. He's like, no, you can't do that. Don't do that. Okay, and Smyslov's like, all right, I won't do that. I'll take all these pawns. King g7, takes. So after about 4 moves, white's moved his king up and he's won a pawn. And black got his rook really good. However, what do you think of black's king? Is that black king going to move up the board?
No.
It can never move up the board. It just stays there doing nothing. It's like being down a piece. Let's say you had a knight on a7 on the side of the board and it couldn't move. How's that helping you? Right? So if you have pieces that are trapped, somebody would say, man, you're like down a piece over there. What are you doing? Your knight can't move. Your bishop can't move. You're trapped. That black king is trapped. It's never going to move up the board, and all it's doing is defending a pawn. And white's king can move up everywhere. White's king, if he checks him, then his king can come up here. So basically, this is a defensive rook. It's stopping white. This is a defensive king. It's protecting a pawn. There's no offense. There's just defense, but white's up a pawn. So that's not good. H5. He's trying to get his king up. Attacks the pawn. Check. Check. And they trade pawns. Takes. And this is like the Fischer endgame. Now Smyslov has 2 passed pawns again. And is black's king over here now stopping the pawns? No. Is this rook stopping the pawns? No. Man, that's not good, is it? Okay, it's very important in endgames, I would say more important, to have passed pawns, not the number of pawns. If you said, I have 4 pawns and he has, I have 5 pawns and he has 4 pawns, so I'm winning. And I'm like, he has 3 passed pawns and you have 1. I'm going to take the 3 passed pawns. What's a passed pawn? A pawn that can't be stopped by another pawn. These pawns are stopped by other pawns. They can't queen. If this pawn goes here, I'm going to take it. These 3 pawns aren't stopped by any pawns. Those are passed pawns. Now, which king is stopping the passed pawns? The white king or the black king?
White king.
The white king. So black has 1 passed pawn, and white's king is stopping it. White has 2 passed pawns, and black king isn't stopping it. So white's winning. He played rook f1, activating his rook. a4, a5, and they both move their king up. Man, look at him move his king up. Good job. Keeps moving the passed pawns. Check. Here. So now he's defending his passed pawn. He's stopping your passed pawn. He's got another passed pawn, and his king can come help too. Perfect. Here comes black's king. See, black's trying. b6. Uh-oh. What kind of uh-oh is it? Do you know what kind it is?
Yeah.
It's uh-oh SpaghettiOs. Yeah.
What?
Now, I don't know what he did. Okay, he checked. If you take the pawn, I go here.
Then the pawn can't be stopped from promoting.
Yeah, so probably black shouldn't do that. So instead, he played a very sneaky move, check. Because now, if the king goes up, we take the pawn and pin. And if it goes back and we take the pawn, the rook's not defended. And that's what happened. And the rook's not defended on e6. So if he pushes it, black can play rook takes rook. Although white will make a queen.
Then he'll check the king.
Yeah, so that's what happened, you're right. Yep. Okay, and he's trying, now watch this, this is very funny. This is tragic? Tragic. You're in check, right?
Yeah.
Okay, the 2 most obvious moves are f4 and king takes pawn. f4, you're trying to queen, king takes pawn, wins the pawn. And he played king f2. And the reason is, f4 and king takes g2 both lose for the same reason. I'll play one and we'll see if you guys can find it. Now white has a really good move.
Queen sees a.
Close. You couldn't be closer.
G8.
Queen g8, that's what we call a spoon. I mean a knife. I mean chopsticks. Wait, what do we call that?
Fork.
Oh, fork, yeah. Okay. And king takes g2 is the same. Same fork. So he played king f2, queen f4 check, also a fork, but only forking a king and pawns, not forking a king and a rook. And unfortunately, we're up a queen. That's not good.
No, not a pawn loss.
Yep. Okay, and this is an easy win for a grandmaster, as long as it doesn't stalemate him. What's funny is, if this rook was off the board, that's stalemate, right? So give up your rook. Fortunately, if you give it up this way, I take it with check. If you give it up this way, That's not stalemate anymore. So he can't give it up. So he played rook h7. And here he resigned because there's no stalemates. Now you're going to lose the rook. If I turn the engine on, it'll say, let's see, how grandmasterly am I? Made in 6. Three? Wow, this is a lot better for white than I thought. Wow, black could only last 3 moves. That's not good. Man, no wonder he resigned. Yeah. Oh, every move black makes, white has mate in 3.
Oh,
yeah. Is that a good square for your king when the guy has a queen? For example, let me give you an example.
Maybe.
Yeah, I wasn't too grandmasterly there. Yeah. Mate in 3. Wow. How's it mate in 3 after here? I mean, I can see mate, actually I see mate in 4 like immediately. I see it in 1 second.
I think I see mate in
Man, if I see mate in 4 in 1 second, oh, I see the mate in 3. I didn't see you could play this move. Queen here. That's the mate in 3, because we're threatening the rook. That's a complicated mate in 3.
I saw that.
Yeah.
King G1. It's not
King G1, then I play another mate. Oh, snap, right?
I already saw them.
You saw it before I was born?
No, I saw them.
Oh, okay,
with
good.
them.
Yeah. Okay, so that was funny because in those endings, sometimes one guy queens, the other guy doesn't queen. That's when you sacrifice the rook for the passed pawn. I actually lost a game to US and USSR champion Boris Golko. He was both. Most people are in both, but he moved from one country to another. And he beat me in a rook and pawn ending, and we both were queening. And he sacked his rook for my queen, but he queened and I couldn't take it. So it was queen versus rook, and I got mated immediately. That game was 7.5 hours. That was the most fun I ever had.
7.5 hours.
And I lost.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a long game.
Yeah. Okay, now this is a Capablanca game I didn't know before today. And he's playing a guy I never heard of. You've heard of Capablanca?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah. He's a famous endgame player. This game was played 100 years ago.
What?
1919. Yeah. Okay, and black took. Okay, this is a very strange endgame because there's double pawns everywhere. Look at all those double pawns. Okay, now, in king and pawn endings, everything I said is still true. You want to move your king up the board and you want to get a passed pawn. The only difference is you don't need an active rook because there's no rook on the board. Now, based on what I said, black is better. Black's king is better than white's, and black can play d5 and try to get a passed pawn. Okay? Unfortunately, black is losing. Capablanca is too tough. Tough guy. Yeah. Okay, and Capablanca really understood this position better than almost anybody. Okay, he played a4, and the reason he played a4 will become apparent at the very end of the game. Okay, and this is something you should probably learn before this class. It's called a breakthrough. Okay, a breakthrough is when you want to make a queen, right? And you don't care what you have to do. Give up a rook, give up a knight, give up 3 pawns, as long as you can queen. You don't care what it costs you, because you get a queen. So that's actually why he played a4. He said, at some point, this pawn is going to queen. Well, the computer was in my way, so it went diagonal. And if I'm going to queen that pawn, I better start moving it now. And people in the audience are like, how can you queen that pawn when there's this pawn here? What are you talking about? Exactly. That's why Capablanca, you heard of him.
Yeah, I did.
And he's from 1919. Now you know why you heard of him. He's pretty good. Okay, let's see what he was thinking.
I didn't heard, I heard him on Chess Kid.
Capablanca?
Yeah,
Ah.
I heard him on Chess Kid.
Well, you heard them talk about him. You didn't hear him speak. Because he's
I
been,
did hear.
You did? Because he's been dead since like 1943. So d5. And the problem is if you take it, here comes the black king. So he played b3 and gave black a passed pawn. And you're like, he gave him a passed pawn, what's wrong with him? Now, the problem with black's position is very apparent now. I told you to move your king up in the endgame. What's the only possible square black can go to that's up? Can he go here? No. Here, illegal. Here, no. Here, illegal.
No.
Here? Yeah, yeah. But easily stopped. Easily stopped.
F4.
Yeah. Now, if black makes 1 billion king moves, he ain't going anywhere, right? White's king is all over the place. Look at white. Look at him go, right? Okay, and you're like, excuse me, Grandmaster Finegold, you can't move your king up here. That pawn's gonna queen. You gotta keep your eye on that pawn and then do nothing. Okay, almost correct, almost. Almost correct. So black thought, what's the problem? I got this pawn. If the king goes away, I'm gonna queen it. If the king stays here and babysits my pawn, draw. Okay? So he's like, this is a draw, what's the problem? Now, this is something you should have learned before the class, but it's sort of hard. It's called the outside passed pawn.
I heard of that.
Right, that's outside. So outside of the board, that's pretty outside. If you go one file over, you're not on the board anymore. That's inside. Okay, so what white's gonna do, he's gonna get outside passed pawns. Now what's funny is, pretend you're playing chess and we just started the game and we shake hands. Let's move one. And I put my 2 pawns in the center, because I'm a grandmaster, and you put your 2 pawns on the side. And everybody's like, no, don't do that, right? In the opening, that's good for the center. In the end game, if you have 2 pawns in the center and the guy's king is in front of it, you're not going to queen. If your pawns are on the side, you're moving both of them. Is the king going to go both sides? No. That's why outside passed pawns are good. Let's see how Capablanca does it. Moves his king up. Okay. Okay. So Capablanca is going to push on the king's side and get a passed pawn. And you guys are like, so what? Black just stops it with his king. And then he plays the move you didn't see. And that's why he played a4. He wants passed pawns on both sides. He's going to do a breakthrough. He's going to break through over there and break through over there and get a passed pawn on each side. And black's king is like, I need another piece over here. I can't go both sides. White's like, no, I'm good. Right here. Perfect. So that pawn is not dangerous, and white can get a pawn and another pawn, and there's nothing black can do. So when you can get outside passed pawns, you can do whatever you want, because the other guy's king can't stop them both. So normally, with the protected passed pawn, black has no hope, or white has no hope. White can't win, because white can't move his king up. For those of you who are confused, let's say you're like, what's the problem? I'm going to go take all these pawns. As soon as you go here, black's going to queen. You have to babysit that pawn. So black is like, there's no problem. King here, king here, king here, draw. You can't do anything. And Capablanca is like, look over there, and here I go. And the guy's like, I didn't see that. Okay. So Capablanca played the move that you would have played, b4.
Knew it.
That's why he played a4. And those pawns are not dangerous for black no matter which way he takes. If he takes with the c pawn, and I take this pawn's easily stopped. And now I have a passed pawn, and I'm going to get a passed pawn over here, and the black king can't stop them both. Can't do it. Black can get 2 passed pawns by taking with the a pawn. 2 passed pawns. But they're very close to each other. That means the white king goes in front of them. And white gets the pawns on the outside. a5, g5. Black's king can't run in both directions. And you're like, well, wait a minute. Why isn't black just queening this pawn? I don't understand. Because I stop it. You can't, and now if you go here, I go here. And you're too slow. You can't do it. You can't queen your pawns. So those pawns are so close together, white's king stops them. White's pawns are over here. There's no way black, nothing black can do. He can't move his king in both directions. Okay. Takes, 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 takes. Here comes this pawn. Here comes this pawn. Can black's king stop them both?
No.
No. And now it's like made in 11. Got to guess something, right? Come on. Give it a second. No, not 39. Come on. Come on. You can do it. 17. Ah, why am I so far off? 16, okay. I'm getting closer to 11, right? 15, there we go. I don't think it's going to get to 11. Not if it's at 15 now after depth 45. So it's looking 22 moves ahead in every variation, and it says mate in 15. So there's no mate in 11. Man, I was really wrong on both of my guesses. Okay. And black resigned because he's like, wait a minute, how am I going to stop both of these pawns? And white stopped both of black's pawns. And again, when you see these endgames and you see people playing them perfectly like Capablanca, that's why they're famous. And it's more astonishing when it's 100 years ago. Was Capablanca reading endgame books? Was he on Chess Kid? Was he getting chess lessons? Was he analyzing thousands of endgames in chess books? No. Was he flying all over the world playing chess?
No.
So how was he good at the endgame? Exactly.
He played it.
There was some great endgame players, like the guys that I showed you. Fischer, Smyslov, Capablanca. They won endgames we thought were draws. Then we're like, oh, outside pass pawn. If you're a grandmaster today, or even a master, or even a Class C player, you know about the outside pass pawn. But what about in 1919? Okay, the reason we know things is because people before did them like, oh, yeah, that guy's good. That guy lost. I forget about him. Okay, and that's why we never heard of like whoever that guy is. Never heard of him. Okay, and the position looks like maybe even black is better. Like here, passed pawn, no passed pawn for white, king on the third rank, king on the first rank. So it looks terrible for white. Problem is, this pawn's easy to stop, and when I get my passed pawn over here, this b4 move is brilliant. It's a breakthrough. The reason this pawn can't queen is because this pawn's in the way. The reason this pawn can't queen is because this pawn's in the way, so we play b4. Amazing, right? Okay, and I didn't prepare this, but I mean, I still do know some stuff. I just want to show you what happened. I don't know how the computer works, but okay. There's a very, 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 very famous breakthrough that I'm sure you all know. Right, guys? You all know it? You seen that before?
Yeah.
Yeah, see? Yeah. He said yeah, but he didn't, then he was like all quiet. He's like, yeah, I saw it. Mm-hmm.
I know the breakthrough.
Yeah? How does white win?
Wait, what did you say again? B6.
How does white win?
B6.
B6. Yeah.
I don't know.
You've learned this before.
Yeah.
See, 3 pawns against 3 pawns looks like a draw. But the reason white has a breakthrough and black doesn't is white is close to queening. Black is not
And
close.
it's also his move.
Right, also his move. That pawn getting there, that takes forever. These pawns queening is much quicker. When your pawns are further advanced, good chance you'll queen. Now, b6 does win. Before we analyze it, one of you said, well, what if it was black's move? Correct.
Yeah.
Right. Black can draw here if it's his move, but he only has one move that does it. How does black draw?
C6?
B6, yeah. If white can play b6 and win, black plays b6 and draws. By the way, a6 and c6 do not draw. For example, c6, what's the winning move for white? Breakthrough.
Oh, A6.
A6. And now white's going to queen something. They're both going to win pawns, but white's going to queen in 2 or 3 moves, and black's never going to queen. And it's the same with a6, obviously, c6. Okay, but b6 does draw. Okay, white plays b6. Obviously, black has to take it because he's threatening 2 pawns. Take this way. This pawn's opened up, so we play a6 and here.
Then the pawn can't be.
And if you take this way, c6,
And then the
and
other
a6,
pawn will
yeah,
around.
and you win, right? That's the breakthrough everybody knows. That's the not like from a chess game. That's just a standard position we show people. And Capablanca, he broke through on the queen side in a slightly different way, but it was the same idea. Played b4, which looked ridiculous, and now he's breaking through. And I'll show you one other breakthrough. It's called the Icelandic breakthrough. Okay, very rare, but it happens in tournaments. I have to make up a position, but I want to show you the breakthrough. Put the king here. We'll put his king over here, and then we'll do this. And we'll give him some pawns here for no reason. Want to do it right.
Can you fill out the board with pawns?
I could. That'd be crazy.
It can be 8 pawns on the board. The more the better.
I'm trying to set this up so it's right, but I'm doing a bad job. Why am I doing such a bad job? I know the breakthrough and I can't think of a position. Hold on. It's a very funny move that's the winning move. Oh, because I'm stupid. I didn't realize I was stupid. Okay. I'm stupid. Okay. And then, yeah. There we go. I'm the stupidest. Yeah, this is good. Ooh, now I'm the smartest. Yes. Teacher of the year, as long as nobody good is watching this. Okay, black is up a pawn because I said so. Right? And black can move his king up the board. If I put this on an engine, I'm sure black's winning. I'm sure. I'm sure. Okay, but let's say black says, I have more pawns than my opponent on the king side. Let's make a queen. And plays g5. Okay? 3 pawns is more than 2 pawns, right? That move loses the game, and now white's winning. It's the Icelandic breakthrough. Who can find it? It's the strangest move ever.
G4.
What's that?
G4.
G4.
Maybe I'll take his other.
We're both gonna queen, but your king's over here, my king's over here, so you're not gonna queen. I'm gonna queen. And now I win. I win. If you go here, I go here. And if you go here, I go here. And that king's not helping. That's pretty funny. In this position, black's up a pawn for nothing, but this move wins. So here's a funny thing. If you were black in this position, you have to play either g4 or g takes h4. If you play like king here, g4 wins for white. You got to see that coming. So I suspect if it's black's move here and he doesn't play the crazy move, yeah, black's winning, king b6. Yeah, there you go, nice easy win. But instead, the crazy g5, and the computer's like, whoa, 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 plus a million for white. What's funny is, if white plays g4, he wins, and if white doesn't play g4, black wins. White's got one chance to do it. If you don't see g4, you think there's a 0% chance you're gonna lose, then the guy goes here, and you're like, no, no. It's much safer to have this pawn structure, there's no breakthrough. White can't break through here, right? Yeah, Icelandic breakthrough. Exciting, right? Yeah. So remember that. Active king, active rook, passed pawns. When you're playing an endgame, that's what I want you to think of. In the opening, you're not moving your pawns to the end of the board. That doesn't work. You're not moving your king up the board. That doesn't work in the opening. And your rook is in the corner crying. When the game of chess starts, your rooks are in the corner. So the opening and the endgame are like the opposite. In the endgame, you move your king up. Don't do that in the opening. In the endgame, move your rook to the 7th rank. You can't do that in the opening. In the endgame, get past pawns and queen them. In the opening, the guy's got a million pieces. You can't do that. So the endgame is a lot different than the opening. That's why we have endgame lectures. He played the endgame better, right? All right, good job. You guys are the best because you're here. All right, see you guys next time. Half point bye.